Welcome to the Coptimizer podcast, a platform dedicated to uncuffing your true potential in public safety. We're here to provide you with valuable tips and insights that will help you optimize your life and career. I'm retired Chief Patrick Flannelly, and I'm honored to be your guide and coach on this journey. Here, I'll share the latest insights and strategies to help you survive and thrive in the demanding world of public safety. Our noble duty is to protect and serve. We embody the role of peacemakers in our communities. However, this profession's immense physical and mental demands come with a price. If we fail to take a proactive approach for our well-being and lead ourselves first, then the stress from the job can and will lead to poor health outcomes. We have all seen it play out. Not only does this impact our professional and personal lives, but it also affects our ability to fulfill this sacred duty. Like many of you, my journey has been filled with tremendous challenges, with highs and lows. However, through creativity, experience, and a positive attitude, I successfully managed over 30 years in law enforcement, emerging healthy and happy. Now, I am driven to share what I've learned to show you that the path is not all doom and gloom. There is hope and a profound purpose in serving your community, and I'm here to show you that it does not have to come at the cost of your health and well-being. Join us as we explore cutting-edge research, interview top experts, and share inspiring stories of transformation. Whether on duty or off, it's time to optimize your potential and live your best life. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. This is the Coptimizer Podcast. Greetings all. Welcome back to another episode of the Coptimizer Podcast, and got another amazing guest. I don't know how it keeps happening, but I keep getting all these amazing people that want to spend 90 minutes of their valuable time talking to me. So Roland Clee, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it.
I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah.
Great deal.
Well, we've been following each other for years in the
Mhm.
LinkedIn world, and I really enjoy your Substack and um, the work that you're doing. But rather than me telling people what you're doing, how about you give us a little bit of background about you and your website, your training, your Substack, and then we'll get into the topics of the day. How about that?
Fantastic. Well, greetings, everyone. My name's Roland Clee. I was hired by a major Florida police department as a community service officer in 1994. And as community service officer, I was in uniform patrol until about 2001. And then I went to investigations. And then from investigations in 2009, I went to the administrative floor and worked on chief staff nearly until my retirement in 2021. And my last year, I got to spend it as the missing persons detective back in the homicide unit, the second or third time there. Glad they had me there. And in retirement, I've established the American Peace Officer Substack. I found Substack is something where a writer owns their work forever, and that was important to me. So I moved off of doing things where I shared my rights with Microsoft. went to went to where I own everything forever, and so I have a subscription-based Substack called American Peace Officer. It's americanpeaceofficer.com, and link you directly there. I guess I'm getting close to 150 articles there, and AI can't help me with that because I'm usually trying to put ideas together that have never been put together before. But it's just driven out of a passion for the next generation of law enforcement, that we don't lose ground, and also that the new centurions get an idea of what policing was like 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, that's really cool. I I try to I'm very inconsistent with Substack, and I'm trying to write more on there for a lot of those reasons. But I did there was I watched a movie over the holidays, and there was a really funny quote in there from I don't know, have you seen the new Knives Out movie?
Yes.
Did you
Yeah.
see did you
Wake up,
catch
dead
that
man.
one? Yeah, and which that those shows are phenomenal. I think they just do just such a really intricate job in their storytelling and the way they weave things. But the one of the characters is a professional writer, and he's writing a book. But at one point, he makes a crack in there like he doesn't want to be relegated to like the Substack underworld of
Yeah.
writers forever.
Oh, they totally slammed Substack on that one. I was like,
I thought it was funny, but I was like, hey, that's kind of mean.
I,
But I love Substack, and we can fly right in here because one of the things that I really like about Substack is just like you mentioned, you own your work, you're free to write whatever you want. People are free to follow you whether they want to or not. And really it really boils down to your content, right? If you're producing good content, then people are going to follow you. And what I really appreciate what you're doing is you are taking that shared knowledge and wisdom and packaging it in a way that's very applicable to today's cops. And we're going to kind of touch on a lot of things today, like AI, recruitment and retention,
yes.
training, leadership. But all of this stuff, there are some common threads that connect all of these things. And one of them really is because of the recruitment and retention issue that we've had over the last decade, we have a lot of young cops right now. And we lost a lot of seasoned veterans. So you know, some of these hangers on that, when you're a young guy, you're like, these old timers, they just need to move on. We got this shit. Like we can handle this from here. But they don't know what they don't know yet, right? They
Right.
don't have institutional knowledge and wisdom and the a strong understanding of the why things are the way they are today, and they just assume that everything's always been this way. So yes, go. It's so important, I think, for people like you. You're doing such a fantastic job, by the way, and um, keep it up because I love reading your work and and seeing the feedback that you get, and being able to create dialogue around some of these things is, I think, critically important for the future of policing.
And it's opened so many doors for me. I've had the opportunity to travel around the country, speak at conferences, speak at meetings, and even our lobbying trip that was organized by Paula Fitzsimmons to DC, working with the Police Officers Defense Coalition. So that was just important work where we got to meet with federal lawmakers during Police Week. I mean, how bad is that? So it's been a great deal of the right kind of attention, thankfully.
Yeah.
And we are spreading the word because I mean the guys that I came on with, you came on in, well, I guess you came on in like 91, right? You were in the Air Force in
Well,
91?
I was in the Air Force in the late 80s, doing security police then, went to college, and then I
Okay.
started with my agency in 95.
Okay. But you still
So,
had veterans on the agency that were
oh yeah.
Vietnam vets.
Yep.
And maybe the chief was prob around Korean War era, but I had those guys, and they had for some reason they were still able to do policing with just a little bubble light, like Starsky and Hutch, a radio that had like three channels on it, like a brick, and we didn't have anything in the cars. I mean, we were still handwriting many. All our traffic reports were all handwritten, and we had not progressed to the point where our supplements. So it was much more fun taking a report on a stolen car than a recovered stolen car. And then, of course, so those things get filed. But I mean, we go back to this age, and then somebody's like, oh, I can't get my car computer to hook up to the internet. I'm like, well, what a problem to have, right? And they're like, oh, my GPS
I
took me
can't
to the.
work. I can't work. I can't do anything right now. My computer won't let me.
I had a young guy with me, and he's a bodybuilder. I mean, he was huge, and he was always red. I mean, this guy. If I was a potato, he was a beet, and he was in FTO, and I was training him, and he said that no matter how much I tell him about street numbering, that it's never going to make sense to him. But miracle of miracles, when we stopped the training process and worked on that for a little bit, he stopped driving by the houses that we were supposed to be going to, and we were able to get there. But yeah, I mean, I think even the process of trainees, having trainees really taught me to be better myself. I had to I had to know the policy that I was teaching them. I had another recruit, and she was a lot of fun. But we handed people an envelope with an affidavit so they could go to traffic school when we write them a ticket. And she said she'd never looked inside it. She says, there's some good stuff in there. Well, guess what? We're not going on the road until you get a handle on that good stuff in there.
That's so funny. There's good stuff in there. There's a lot that we could chat about, but that um we went through a transition from we were doing the same thing. We were using typewriters. I don't know if I've ever told this story, but there was my first day on the job. So like I got sworn in, me and one other guy, we got sworn in on the same day, and um, we went right into a training process. And they were a little forward thinking at the time, the way they were doing hiring. They didn't just wait until you had 10 or 15 candidates or whatever. Like we're a mid-sized agency, not huge, right? Like so it's not like trying to run a class of 150 officers through an academy. They didn't wait. They got you hired and they got you training and they got you involved. And so our police department at the time was under construction. It was old City Hall being renovated. I shouldn't say it was a new police department. It was old space being retrofitted, which, at the end of my career, I went through a brand new building process and I realized like, man, we should have done this 30 years ago. Then we wouldn't be doing this now. Um, but I'm sitting in this room waiting for our training sergeant to show up, and I'm watching officers come in off the street, and they're grabbing paper stacks out of baskets, and they're sitting down at typewriters, and they're typing away, and it kind of hit me. I'm like, there's no computers in this room, and I live in a university town, right? So I've been using computers. Even I'm fairly old too, right? So I've been using computers since the mid 80s, and
Right.
we used them when I was in the military, and so after a couple minutes, I'm 27, right? Like I'm not a 21-year-old green kid, waiting. I there's an officer that was kind of sitting there. I was like, hey, a quick question. He turns and gives me that rookie look, like, are you even talking to me right now? I was like, where are the computers? And he just turned back around and started typing. He just laughed. Where are the computers? Son, we are the computers here. It just keeps typing away. And I was like, oh shit. Like this is 1995. Like why are they typing on typewriters? And
Yeah.
fast forward, we eventually go through adopt our first CAD and RMS system in the late 90s. Had a catastrophic failure with the first system, had to go through the whole process a second time. But we switched over to Axon Records late in my tenure as chief, and the training the training process for that, we allotted 4 hours, but most of the young officers only needed about 20 minutes. That's
Right.
how adaptive and intuitive these new systems are. But I went to every one of our training sessions and wanted to just brief our people on, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is, it's change, but it's good change. And so I asked the question, I was like, hey, how many people here know what carbon paper is? And I had one guy that was there. It was the guy, the longest tenured guy on the department at the time. Of course, he raises his hand. Nobody else in the room like knew what carbon paper. They didn't know
Had
what
any
five.
idea?
They had no idea what 5 sheet carbon paper was. Like so, when we typed majors, like things that were going to go to detectives and major felony cases, it had to go on 5 sheet carbon paper because you needed a
Mhm.
copy of 5 different copies to go to different places. So I had to explain to them, like, hey, there's this little sheet of carbon that goes in between the pieces of paper. And when you roll it into your typewriter, you start typing. And guess what? If you make an error on page one, like
It's on page
and
four.
you've got a sergeant that loves to red line everything. It's like you rip that thing out, you throw it away, and you just start over because it's good. Because otherwise, you're going to have to get white out and then go back and fix every one of your copies and put in the paper and line it up just right. And so, and then people are kind of looking at me like whiteout. So I was like, how many of you know what whiteout is? Nobody knew what whiteout was. I was like, holy shit. They do
We used to
not
fix
know how
scratches
good
on
they
the car
have
with
it.
whiteout.
Yeah.
Everyone had whiteout in their pocket. Yeah.
It wasn't just for report writing.
No.
Uh, could have saved a lot of files, papers in your file, right, for dinging cars up.
That's it, you
Anyway,
know?
but it seems like a small thing, but it's not that long ago. I mean, I mean, this exponential leap in technology that we've undergone in the last 20 or 30 years, and I'll go back to the comment you made about your recruit riding around. Like he doesn't know the street numbering system. He's having a hard time memorizing 100 blocks probably, right? Like the
Yeah.
north-south dividing line, how everything, how the grid is laid out. And it's like, well, how do you navigate if you don't understand the grid? Well, you can't, right? Or you can't do it very well. And and so young officers today, like, and we tried to resist it as long as we could. We still issued map books. We still did
Right.
all the manual orientation training. We try to, force that as much as you can on people. But one of my concerns is like that process alone, just the rote memorization, like having to visualize in your head where these things are. It really does. The brain responds differently to that type of learning, rather than, hey, I get a call, it comes in on my MDT, and I hit en route, and oh, guess what? Now it's giving me the best route. I don't have to think about where I'm going. Um, yeah, it's crazy how much things have changed.
It
Good
is.
and good and bad with it.
Yeah. And I did and just one last war story about this. I saved somebody else's recruit. They were about to fire her, and based on map book orientation. And I my solution that saved her was that she had to face north when she was reading her map book. And that would fall flat, if you told anybody, any young person today, well, why would you do that? Why? And but there's so many things that are getting lost because we have lost the basics of what of even just human interaction. And I am not against body cameras. Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. But it changes everything. And there was a street in the town I worked, that community service officers like me, there was like a no response area. I mean, it was such a tough area. And I remember one of the captains saying, I don't think I could do this job with the body camera on because it'd be recording me just and you have to toss it with these guys. You'd have to be throwing the insults and the profanity and everything that you needed in order to get real with some people on the
Yeah.
side of the road. And he says, I don't know how we would be. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I don't know how I'd figure it out, but I definitely couldn't do it the way I did it before. And so the adoption of all these things, um, I'll tell you, one of the things that I do miss, I've been seeing it come back lately, but the uniform. And I want everyone to be as comfortable as possible, but our TAC guys should be wearing, outer vest carriers, but we should be able to see somebody's buttons, right? Just-
Well, you and I, we could probably go around on that one a little bit, but well, I think ultimately what we're all understand is professional appearance is important, and when you have good professional appearance, it demands respect, and you get respect from it. Um, yeah, I've always felt like there is a fun, I think there is a happy median in there where
yeah,
you can introduce new technology and do it in a way that that benefits the officer, their health, their well-being, their backs, their hips, all of these common injuries that, orthopedic injuries that happen to cops over the span of their career. Um, Without looking like a, Joey bag of donuts, right?
right.
And
It
that's
is
it,
what do they call a soup sandwich, you know?
soup sandwich. Well, and it does, when it comes back down where it all boils down to, and I know we'll probably, I don't know, maybe we just dive into it right here is that's a leadership, challenge. And if you're going to create these types of uniform policy changes, appearance changes, then it has to be policed. And human tendency is, um, if no one's saying anything to me, it must be okay. And then this slow drift can occur. So uh, the beard that's supposed to be a quarter inch now is 3/4 inches, straggly. The vest that's supposed to be, clean, pressed, in good appearance is, dirty, has crumbs and coffee stains on it. Fitness has faded. Crazy.
I have to take a quick break. My dog is sick and it needs to go out real quick.
You better get out there. Yeah, so I mean and I think ultimately the challenge is when your frontline supervisors let that drift occur, it's really just not uniforms that you have to be concerned about. Uniforms are just one symptom of underlying issues. And yeah, I mean it's just human tendency too, right? Like especially if you're working sh long shifts and you're tired, and sometimes appearance is the first thing to go, and then you start your discipline starts to fade, and yeah, it can lead to a whole other things, but I
Well,
digress.
I had a young fella, I just loved him, and I invited him to work on a detail with me. And but then it came time, everyone's taking a picture with the chief, and he's like, he's got a hole in his uniform pants, and I mean, and he's not growing a beard, he's just a mess. And he's like, why didn't you tell me the chief was going to be here? The chief's always with me. And I had to think, who exactly what you said. This wasn't. I remember back in the day that people, and not just in policing, but if people weren't dressed appropriately, they would be sent home
School.
and
Yeah.
sent home and brought back. I've seen people fired for, failing to show up and do things like that. And we have let things go out of control as far as that focus and discipline in policing. And I saw it happen with some people. And you can look at the squad and see how the sergeant's doing. And I still I've discovered that the one of the highest levels of leadership in any policing agency is the immediate supervisor and the FTO. Those people are going to set the tone for that officer's entire career, whether it be 2 years, 20 years, 27 years, whatever it is. You need to have that presence. You need to have that part right, and the right people in those positions um, with the right not morality. The word I'm looking for is morale. It's like an anagram.
Yeah, it is.
But
Well, it's
but you know
they
they're the
set the culture, right?
high morale. If you have a high morale supervisor, you're gonna have a winning squad.
Yeah, and that comes with just high levels of accountability.
Right.
And and I this man, we could go on for days about this, but the and you see a lot of this on LinkedIn and other forums where there's a lot of people that that bash leadership, and I guess a lot of times it's probably well earned and justified, but you don't see a whole lot of people talking about followership, how to be a good follower, how to be, that's one of the first things they teach in the military. It's like, don't, first worry about what you're doing and how you can make
Hmm.
yourself the best you can be, and then worry about what anyone else is doing, right? And that's because if you're not doing your job well, then someone else has to hold you accountable, and someone else has to be that standard. And I think that damages morale inside of police departments when supervisors or FTOs fail to set the right culture right off and set high expectations for performance right off the bat, and then hold people accountable to the standard. It, and then it's like, oh, then once you get that poison in the barrel, it's hard to get it out of there. And
It
in
is.
that,
It you can write as many lofty instill accountability in all personnel mission statements as you want, but everyone knows whether we mean that or not.
right, absolutely. I was very fortunate, I think, early in my career because the shift that I worked on, we had new supervisors who really got this. One was, he eventually became chief and a mentor of mine, but he came from LA County Sheriff's, moved back here, and we had another sergeant that was new, and they were like, they were known to be very, very detail oriented and high levels of accountability. But man, our shift, I mean, we worked very well together. It was a very competitive environment in a way, right? Like you didn't want to let anyone else down, and
Oh,
everybody was
yeah.
out there producing numbers, and I mean, numbers in a good way. Like you were busy doing stuff, and you took a lot of pride in that. And it wasn't just yeah, I mean, we all know in policing where, the difference between someone that's busy driving value and someone that's busy acting busy.
Right.
And, I was just lucky. That expectation was set for me very, very early on in my career. And and I was surrounded by people that worked like that. So it was easy. But yeah, you definitely can see the flip side of that. And it's no fun when you have to hold someone else accountable to a standard they know, they just refuse for whatever reason to hold themselves to the standard.
Right.
Like, why do I need to tell you to shave like when you're coming into
Yeah.
work? Or why do I need to tell you your hair, your hair has gotten too long, or you still have mud on your boots from last night's foot pursuit, stuff like that. Like,
But when the
yeah,
standard's like that on the squad, it's not even going to reach the sergeant.
right.
It's going to be peer to peer standard bearing. And I hate to say, oh, and that's what we need to get back to. But putting an emphasis on professional appearance is vital. And you can be professional with an outer vest carrier and doing that. And let the uniform be job specific. I don't expect you to
Yes.
be, being a flight observer in a helicopter, riding a horse, doing a motorcycle, a mountain bike. If you're on a mountain bike, I want to see you in shorts and a polo and body armor and a helmet.
Yeah.
Um, but let's figure this stuff out. But when people call the police, and of course, you and I had a very rich conversation a few days ago just about the reasons why people are not incentivized to call the police anymore. And how are we going to get good data if what we've done is we've basically killed our data source? And we used to really find only collateral opportunities of policing by going out and taking stolen toaster calls, figuring out what was going on. If you go out there and you take a report on a $150 lawnmower, one of the neighbors is going to tell you who's probably causing the problems in their neighborhood.
Yep.
And you're going to be able to address that as an organization. But if you just give people, you show up there, you hand them a postcard that says, "Go to this website and file your report," and then they go there and it doesn't work, they're not going to call the next time that something happens. They're not going to call until they have an insurance claim. And we're not going to have that property because you can't do crime analysis without, seriously logging the greatest percentage of property crime that you can get. There's going to be
Yep.
unreported crime that, you if you're choosing the trends to follow by part one crimes, you're you're in a disaster area.
Well, yeah, let's dig into that a little bit because I do think we're in this interesting period of again another transition, right? We were in it from going from carrying wheel guns to semi-automatic revolvers and going from no computers in the car to computers, no mapping system, map books to mapping systems. And for all these efficiencies that you gain, they always come at an expense to something else. And we're in this we're in this environment now where recruiting has been struggling now for the last, and I'd say it's been all the way going all the way back to 2010 timeframe is really when we started to see this really start to change. 2015, in the post-Ferguson days, we saw a big dip, and then post-Floyd days, we saw another big dip. But if you're looking at the data has been clear for a long time. Like fewer people are coming into the policing profession. And so but the calls for service haven't changed. In fact, they've gone up. So the demand for police services is going up. The amount of resources that we have is going down, but the technology that's in place allows us to gain efficiencies in the per officer spectrum, but
Mhm.
that comes at a cost too, right? So there's, everything is a push and pull, give and take. But if 52% I think to your point, right? If 52% of crime goes unreported, which I think is what the last Gallup or the National Crime Victimization Survey showed,
Right.
right? That means that the data that you're making and basing your decisions on as an organization is 50% complete. Like you only have half the picture. And so you're trying to,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
you're half blind.
yeah.
You're absolutely right.
And so there could be some really obvious things that are happening that you just can't see yet because you don't have the data. Now, where I do think where I do think there's opportunity in the technology is we can push some of these administrative functions and tasks, like some simple reporting mechanisms, we can push them to an individual's phone and put the onus on them so we can save the hour-long time of driving there and writing it down. But you have to do that in a way that you capture the data, but you also let the reporting party know that the data actually means something to you and you care about it, and you have a
Yes.
mechanism to follow up with them so they realize that, okay, I'm not just, you know, I'm not just typing into the ethosphere here. Like
Hmm.
there is value that's being derived from that. And that comes back to like messaging. And I think the early online reporting tools, like the one we used for a while it was horrible, but it was the best there was. I mean, that we could find. And I think that's something that a lot of where technology is closing that gap, where you can actually get these online tools, make them more efficient. But you also have to make sure that your staff understands like there's you still have to have relationships with the people that are giving us this information because that's that's gold in the policing world, right? You have to have good information and you have to have relationships. No, the technology is not going to go out and put handcuffs on anyone.
No. And we talk about calls for service going up. Well, calls for service are going up, but so many of them are the disputes, disturbances, nuisance calls, things like that that people just want to have handled. No report gets filed on those. It's just a line of data in your CAD, and of course, who loves a disposition of no report better than a patrol officer? I mean, seriously, I mean,
Yep.
they've got three traffic reports that they got to write before the end of their shift already, and they go up there, they settle the dispute. They didn't bring blue cheese with my wings. Yeah, okay, well, here's some blue cheese. True story, it happened.
I believe it for
And
sure.
and
Yeah.
go out there and problem solve. I mean, we want the cops to interact with problem solving. I think that you make more progress in the community by doing policing than you do by having picnics.
Oh,
You
you mean like
you're
these the Instagram era policing, right? Where
exactly, yeah.
everything is posed and
We're
curated.
making breakfast for this person. What are you doing? You're mandatory reporters. If that person's that helpless,
Yeah.
do I do believe in, and I participate in it. When you're working with somebody and they have a problem and you're able to do an act of goodwill. I know it's social media gold, but some of these things need to just be done in quiet
Yeah.
and let people ponder on that. But if you have coffee with the cop, or if you have the community picnic and you bring out your field kitchen out for that, that's great. Don't stop that, but just understand that there's much greater value in actually caring for
Well,
people, and
yeah.
the people that you're going to meet by responding to more calls are the people that don't like the police, that wouldn't bother going to coffee with a cop or wouldn't bother going to the picnic. They hate the cops, but now we have to interact, and those are the people that need a breakthrough with policing.
And I know this gets I almost hate to say it because it gets abused so often, but it's attributable to the why, right? Understanding the why behind what you're doing and like what's the end game. Of course, you want good relationships. So when you have when you do a cookout in one of your, troubled apartment complexes, why are you out there? Well, you're not out there just to give someone a free lunch. You're out there to develop a relationship with them. Why do you want the relationship? Well, because you need them to call you when something's going on.
Right.
And once somebody knows you, then they're more apt to call you. So when you're at those things and you're giving out your card or you're having conversations and you're interacting with them in a way, if you're not looking at it as a crime and call reduction strategy, then you're not there for the right reason. Like if you're just
Right.
looking to put an image up on social media that nobody looks at and no one gives a shit about, then like maybe a few people do, right? Then you're missing the entire point. Like and so when it goes back to data, right? So this is also something that police leaders you have to anticipate this, that when you increase and improve your outreach efforts, and if you're doing it for the right way, then you should expect your calls for service to go up and your numbers to reflect that. Like you
Yes.
actually may see an increase in reported crimes. And so come end of year when you're getting ready to do, or you do your monthly stats or your end of year stats, and oh man, my crime numbers have gone up. Like, how do I explain this to the public? Like, if you didn't understand the why behind what you were doing, then now you've put yourself in a position where you may have you may have worked yourself out of a job. Like you've done all the right things, but that's it. But that's how you make, progress. That's how you solve problems, crimes. That's how you improve quality of life. And then ultimately, what you're using those things for is a filter to get to that 1%, right? That
Right.
1% of people in your community that's driving 80% of your work. I don't think that's an exaggeration. People used to call it the 80-20 rule, right? Like 20% of your population drives 80% of your work. I think it's closer to 1 to 2%. Outside of traffic crashes, um, I mean, I wish I could
Well, I'd
prove
have to
myself.
agree with you because statistically, the only conclusion I could come up with the decrease in homicides was attrition.
No one talks about that, right? That's a
Yeah,
real thing. Like,
yeah. I'm like,
it,
we're not developing new murderers. We're running out of murderers.
well, on the opioid issue, I mean, fentanyl has killed off an entire population of drug-related homicides.
It has,
Literally.
yeah,
Like,
it
I mean,
has.
that's not, um, I don't think that's an exaggeration. And I don't understand why people, like, why would you be afraid to say that? Like,
Well,
hey, we're trading one problem for another, right?
every week, fentanyl was killing more Americans than Pearl Harbor and 9/11 combined. I mean, we tolerate that? And are we going to not do anything about that? And I knew that there was a drug liberalization. I think you and I had a conversation about a year ago about drug liberalization and that was coming to
Yeah.
your neck of the woods, and it was Amendment 3 was on our ballot here in Florida, and I fought against it. We won in like a last minute fight, but they still had more than 50% support. And of course, people the myth of weed as being this mellow drug. Well, it was in 1995 for the most part. It wasn't
Yeah.
immediately related to psychosis, but now we have about 5 times the concentration of THC in weed, and we're wondering and people are taking it for anxiety. I mean, this is the worst ever.
And it creates anxiety.
Exactly. It's the
Yeah,
last
like,
thing you want to do. The poor guy, who died in that traffic stop in Memphis about a year and a half ago, about 2 years ago. He was somebody who was on, a bunch of anxiety medicines, and then was also loaded up with THC in his system, and we're acting why people did this. And Mike Brown was, according to the DOJ, toxicology, was intoxicated on weed at the time that he had his encounter with Darren Wilson.
right.
So it's something that keeps recurring, and it's just so strange to me. It's such a contradiction that we would have drug liberalization d during the time when we're having the greatest fatality crisis due to drugs in the history of the country.
I got into a really interesting and to touch on that because yes, in Indiana, I think we're one of 13 states that has no form of legalized marijuana just yet, and they actually just rolled back some of the carve-outs they had for like Delta 9,
Hmm.
some of the THC or not, yeah, the CBD products that if it was under a certain threshold of THC, then you could sell it as a anti-inflammatory thing, something like that. And I'm not dispelling that there aren't legitimate uses, but there, when you have these conversations, I just wish that we could do it in a way where we um, have some logic behind why are we doing this? Like, what's the end game?
Hmm.
Um, and sadly, particularly when it comes to marijuana legalization, the the biggest driver for this is tax revenue. I mean, that's how we legitimize this belief that it's the right thing to do because it's happening anyway, so we might as well tax it and regulate it and generate some money on it. And it's like, okay, fine. If you want to believe that, then what level of harm are
Right.
you
Willing
are
to accept.
what are you willing to accept that's going to come with that? How many traffic fatalities is going to be enough? It's the same logic I applied like when I went out to DC and here in the state of Indiana when we were concerned about legislation that was going to allow bigger, heavier trucks on the roadways. Um, you know, Private industry, the shipping companies want bigger, heavier trucks. Why? So they can move uh, more products at a cheaper
Hmm.
cost. So who benefits from that? Well, if they could keep costs down to the consumer benefits. But generally, what we know is right, it's more about profits for the shareholders on the back end that really
Right.
drives these decision makers. So, the question ultimately is how many people in Indiana or in your state are you willing to sacrifice to have cheaper consumer goods at the expense of, fiery crashes on the interstate because a twin 33 truck now has just increased its stopping distance by 27 feet. And,
Yeah.
if you're in this is the way I explained it, which doesn't seem like a big deal unless you're in the 20-foot car in between two semis.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And now your car is a xylophone
It
and
is.
and and you don't walk away from it. And I say that flippantly, but that's the logic, right? And I hate to get too far onto the slippery slope here, but that's just the reality of it.
Now, the
Yeah.
tax revenue thing, depending on what state you're looking at, it's either cost $5 per dollar raised or $8 per dollar raised. But it's always been at that negative income thing. The more the more harm that you have going on. My friend, his favorite place in the country as a motorcycle rider was Durango, Colorado, and he says, I can't even go there anymore.
I bet.
And he
Yeah.
says, you just see all these people with all these poor kids with total 100% have lost their ambition to be in a productive life. And of course, you and I know that when people have expensive habits and no employment, that drives crime.
Yep. And yeah, the number of fatalities, and this again, this is where Indiana is in a good position, and this is the message that I tried to relay, and still to this day, and that's why I was writing about it at the time was, um, if you're going to do it, fine, do it, but be honest about why you're doing it, and be honest about what the repercussions are going to be, and don't
Right,
kid yourself, don't bury your head in the sand and assume that it's, hey, this is all going to be good, because what we've learned in Colorado, Washington, Oregon, California is the number of fatalities on your highways are going to go up.
right,
And the ability for law enforcement to enforce some of, these, impaired drivers from marijuana, because we also know that generally if they're on if they have marijuana in their system, they also have other drugs, and that's data that's captured, from the arrest. Um, yeah, those numbers are going up. So if you're going to legalize marijuana and generate tax revenue, you have to then have do a calculation for, well, how much is this going to cost the state in terms of how we, for our drug treatment centers, what are some of the, second, third order effects of legalization? What's that going to cost us? And then you try to start to make some decisions about whether it's a net benefit or a net loss, right? And I personally think depending on whose numbers you look at, it's generally been a net loss. There has not been a net gain. And we haven't even touched on the black market and what happens. We've both worked, violent crimes. We both worked dope, right? Um,
mhm,
that 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 was the first thing that we were asking, all the way back to 2013, 14, when Colorado was legalizing, was, I had a conversation with someone from Colorado who was very pro legalization. And I asked him the question, I was like, well, how are you going to manage the black market? And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, you realize that when you start selling legal marijuana out the storefront, right, you're going to create a black market that's, where a lot of illegitimate or illegally grown marijuana is going out the back door, right? Oh, no, 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 that won't happen. That's why we're doing this, so
exactly.
we can tax and regulate. And I looked at him like he said that with a straight face. I was like, so you really believe that? Like how are you going to enforce that? Like, what are your processes that you have in place to manage that? And he like it hadn't even been a contemplation for him. Like it never even crossed his mind. And yeah. And the fact that it's not federalized, right? So it makes it a cash business. That
Yeah.
just opens up whole other stories. But yeah, again, I don't want to get too far off the rails. But going back to our original point, right, is, homicides are down. A lot of part one crimes are down, and that's a good thing. And I do think good policing strategy and effective strategies have been a part of that problem. But I also think, again, some of the things that we can't measure are when you look at the number of fatalities over the last decade from overdose, from heroin and fentanyl, like there are calculations that someone a hell of a lot smarter than me can probably do to understand, like, just the opportunities for criminalization have just disappeared. Like, I mean, we've literally lost an entire generation of potential criminals.
Yeah.
Not just those that would commit murders in violent crimes, but those that are, just like you said, the quality of life issues that are committing petty crimes to sustain their habit. Like,
Right.
I mean, if you got to, like, and I used to talk in community groups all the time. Like, if you have two, or this is why data is so important, right? And this is why officers have to pay attention to this. This is why staffs need to pay attention to this. If you have three or four burglaries that happen in a neighborhood where you've not previously had burglaries, and they happen over the course of a few days or maybe even a few weeks, there's a pretty good chance you have a heroin addict living in somewhere within a 1 or 2 block radius.
Absolutely.
It's not the burglars coming from the bad side of town to come, to come invade, your peace and quiet. It's one of your neighbor's kids, and or one of your kids that's doing it. And that's the harsh reality, right? And
Hmm.
um, yeah, but I digress again.
No, but a great point made, for us to think of. Um, we are so trained. I'll just use a story from I think 2000, 2002, 2003. We hadn't had a homicide in 5 months. Everyone's patting one another on the back. We're like, good job, level one trauma center. Good job. But as soon as there is a homicide, or as soon as there's three homicides in a week, the homicide squad's like, we can't prevent homicides. Nobody can prevent homicide. And I'll tell you, that's what got me up to the third floor, to our administration floor, was the fact that people were saying, you can't prevent homicides. Well, that was a non-starter for my chief. We had just had, a violent domestic violence murder that left a child essentially orphaned. And we looked at our homicides and we said, a third of these, say 7 out of 21, were all DV related. Can we do something about that? I mean, you can't stop them all. I understand that. You might have one drift into your area, but if you have something that has all the warning signs, can we do something about that? And we did. We did, and we did it successfully, and we really got we had years where we had zero DV homicides because of the style and response that we would have our officers do, and the level of training that we would give to our officers in whether it was a stalking case or a simple DV, and really do a good lethality assessment. It worked. I mean, you could still have a couple come down from another state and just get mad in an Orlando motel and kill one
Yeah.
another. I mean, it can happen like that, but it should happen like that. I mean, we should be doing everything that we can for the residents that we've already had contact with, and we know where there's a domestic violence problem. Now, what if we applied that to most areas of crime and law enforcement? If we knew people were hitting car dealers, and we do,
Yep.
what can we do about that as far as a strategy? We could solve that. We could keep those stolen cars out of the shipping containers in our ports, because you can just they do a big X-ray of a shipping container, and as long as it looks like the cargo that's described in there, like if you said there's a pickup truck in there, and they do the x-ray and it looks like a pickup truck is in there, they won't search it. They won't check it for what it is or anything like that. But if you say, oh, well, I've got an SUV in there and it's like two convertibles, then, the port authorities will do something about that. But, what can we do? What can we do? What should we do? And I just see us not doing that a lot, and that's a shame. I mean, it's like leaving money on the table.
Yes. And that's interesting, right? That because that kind of gets to like one of the first questions that I wanted to ask, we never got around to was like the current state of policing culture. And we've kind of touched on this in a couple of different ways already, but like lethality assessments, it's not a new concept, right?
Right.
These are things that people that have for a long time that eventually picked up these patterns and figured it out. Um, like they've written the blueprints there for the rest of us. Like we need to learn from this, and then with them we need to share what we're doing and how it's working again and complete, just always um, you know, iterate on those processes to continually perform. But at the core of it, the officer that's pulling up on the street, that's going to the house for the fourth time this week, and he's in hour 10 of his third 12-hour shift, and he goes up to the domestic and doesn't take the action that needs to be taken. That's when preventable homicides occur. And it may be lost on that individual officer that like, hey, look, this is not my problem. It's theirs. I've been here a dozen times. We've tried to help them. He's right in one aspect, and I'll say he just,
I got you. Yeah.
could be he or she, right? They're right in one respect in that, yeah, there has to be a level of accountability that happens there. But for the mindset and when you're training young officers, it like you can't allow yourself to get wrapped up and not allow yourself to do what you're supposed to do by policy and by practice, because in the end, what you're trying to do is prevent a serious crime from occurring in there, a victimization not only maybe of a spouse, but of children and other people in the home, and the quality of life that it impacts for the neighbors and those that are around it. And that we have the data to support it, right? If we have a visible sign of injury, then we shall take action, not might. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. To
then
do
so
pro
that's
arrests, do an intervention on this thing.
and when we don't do what we know we should do, then what we're doing is kicking the can down the road, and then we're forcing accountability from the outside. So it might be an academic review shows like, hey, look, these lethality assessments show that if we made arrest in 7 of these 21 homicide cases, we could reduce the number of homicides, on average over a large spans of data by 50%.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a huge win. Like the numbers may look small, but think of the positive impact, not just in that moment, but generationally speaking from there. And that's where uh, you have to focus, you have to go back to being a good, you know, I hate to say, a good foot soldier, right? A good
Hmm.
beat cop, focus on what you need to do, why you're doing it, and what outcomes you're looking to, to get through these processes that you have in place, what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, it's just a long way of saying the culture of your agency goes a long way in setting some of the success or failure that you'll have. And so, yeah, I agree. Like, yeah, like I agree 100% with your chief. You can't just throw your hands up in the air and say F it, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to try something. And guess what? If it doesn't work, you readjust. Yeah. Try
And
something different. If it
uh,
works, share it. If it doesn't,
but
discard it.
I got static mainly from middle managers, from lieutenants and captains, and
Hmm.
I tell them what I was doing, and which I was doing because I have the chief on my side, so it's happening. Can we skip to the end where you give me what I want? But they would say, cops are lazy and they're not going to do this. And I would never agree with them about that. And first of all, I don't think that that's going to be a generalization that can ever work, is to say that a whole class of people are lazy and that they can't do it. I'll tell you what, nothing succeeds like success. And when I would give officers things where they would see themselves being successful doing things, they wanted more things to do
Yeah,
every
there's
single time. And
that's
so,
basic physiology. That's a
yeah,
dopamine. Like you
it
get a
is.
response. Like I've just done something and I got rewarded because I got a compliment that I made a difference. I know these people, I've improved maybe not their life, but at least I've improved like this moment in time for
Mhm.
them. I took a little burden off them. That's just, yeah, that's human nature.
So we just kept succeeding because because we said, first of all, we don't believe we believe that saying that you can't decrease homicides is a lie. And then we also rejected the lie that cops won't do that and that they're lazy and that they're not interested in doing that. Which turns out you're going to find a lazy cop here and there. That's okay. We got enough go-getters out there. I mean, we need the cops we need are the cops that are going to go talk to scary people in the middle of the night. That's what we need. If we have people who will do that, then they'll do everything else that we need them to do. And those other ones that won't talk to scary people at night, we just have to accept that, they'll find their way out one way or the other at some point in time. We'll try to keep them as safe as we can until then.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. And that's interestingly enough, in this last decade, right? We've like the turnover rate is high, but we're taking people into the profession that I just think 15, 20 years ago we wouldn't have taken in. And like all things equal, like on paper, like you can have two good candidates, but when you're sitting there and you're talking to them, especially as an experienced cop, you can very quickly, make some, I think, reasonable and smart assessments about who might succeed and who might fail in that moment. And therefore it doesn't mean that this person wouldn't be successful. It just means I think we were better at picking the ones that probably would. And that's why the dropout rates I think that's a contributing factor. I shouldn't say the reason, a contributing factor to why dropout rates at the academy level are so much higher now. Like people I mean, I had several conversations with people that didn't make it out of the field training program. We had people leaving at the academy, like literally in the middle of the academy, they would quit.
Yeah,
Like, this isn't for me. Like, this is not what I thought it was. And I'll never forget one time I had a conversation with a recruit when I was an FTO, and he just he just had an epiphany. Like he had wanted this job for so long. This guy was really squared away. I really liked him. He was a good human being. But he had this epiphany about three-quarters of the way through the training program, like, this is not for me. Like this is not what I thought it was. This like he was scared. And um
right.
and he did the courageous thing and admitted it and said, this is not for me. Um, and I just think we just soft sell some of the realities of what the job is, and I think we do people a disservice when we create recruiting campaigns and make it look like all we do all day is have barbecues and in apartments and help old ladies across the street, push people in the wheelchair, take some selfies. Like that's all fine and dandy until you're hardcore criminal, you're face to face, one on one at 2 o'clock in the morning. Your backup's 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
Like that's the truth of policing right there. And you got to be comfortable with that risk, and you got to be comfortable with yourself, and you got to be comfortable with knowing that you're going to have to commit a certain level of violence in order to save yourself and save others. And I just think that's kind of where this is again, I, trying to stay on theme of where we're at in this conversation. But again, that's a part of it. And you can't separate that from the reality of the job. Um, I think you can train people to be better prepared. And boy, that could lead into a whole nother conversation. But
Well, I'd like to say that I say this a lot when I'm discussing Gen Z recruiting and just basically the recruiting quote unquote crisis that we have. I see what you see, and I see, we went from an all-time low of homicides in 2014, and that's Ferguson, Missouri, August in Ferguson, Missouri. And I think that a lot of people that were really the best of the best in law enforcement, I think they took a pause from encouraging the next generation of their family to go into law enforcement. I think that they saw the wholesale betrayal of the profession, and not just police, but fire also. They were going into that same situation because there were three groups of people in my academy class. There was the first group, and these guys were the naturals. They had been a part of the family for a long time before they had made up their mind in seventh grade that this was where they were supposed to be, and they were ready to do it. They were full of unlimited push-ups. They had they had the spidey sense that other people didn't have. I was part of bucket number two. I mean, the naive but trainable. I was the person, if you gave me enough training, I could do this. But then there's that third group, and I think we all can admit, we know them and we love them, but they're just kept alive by their grandmother's prayers. I
back
mean,
up, Bob.
yes, they're like,
Sorry to all the
no, I
Bobs out
can't
there.
cancel my back. There are worse things than having no backup.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we have those people in there, but I'll tell you, this recruiting crisis took out bucket number one, and it took out the ones that were going to both achieve and thrive in policing, like people like me never could. And some of the people that were still in my academy class, they've got stars on their collar. They got captain's bars, and they're doing great, and they're still doing it. And that's what I'm concerned about. And the idea when I was hired, we had to get in line. I think you remember this, that to become a
Oh
part of my
man.
department, you were picked one out of 1,000.
Yeah,
And they threw
absolutely.
they threw back a lot of extremely qualified people.
Hmm. Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I went to I mean, in the early 90s, mid 90s, it was
Yeah,
really hard to get a job in policing. You were competing against hundreds, if not thousands, of people for the slots to get into the job. And how quickly things changed. Literally a generation, that equation completely flipped.
Travis Yates talks about he was the major over recruiting. They went out to his alma mater in northwest Arkansas, and he's there at the table with the guys, and nobody's coming over to them at this job fair. And he says, "Well, this is unusual," and they're like, "No, this isn't unusual. This is the way it always is." He's like, "Well, that's not good enough. We've got to do better, and we can do better, and this is not." Something that we cannot overcome. And we can't just accept that things are the way that they are. But one of the things that we're going to need from Gen Z is we're going to need a lot more Gen Z officers than anybody's got budgeted right now. And it'll wash out in the end because we're spending, I think San Diego spend over $100 million in overtime.
Wow.
Yeah. And lots of big cities, probably all the top 10 cities are spending in the millions for overtime, and they're still seeing their staffing decline and still seeing more and more. Of course, you're going to burn people out with mandatory overtime.
Yes.
So you got all this money going out there. they have every year they have budgeted for enough people to come on. So, if they're 200 people short, they have 200 people in the books on the budget to get them there. But Gen Z, they're going to come, they're going to look around, they may sign a 2 or 3 year agreement. But if you're not giving them what they want, which are all the merit badges and all the trainings and all the things where they can call themselves experts, um, it's just not in it for them. They're going to take everything that every agency has invested in them and take it to another agency that's looking for people that can provide, that I can do this, that I can be an operator, I can be railroad police, I can be I can be this guy. Um, I can be a court deputy. What do you want from me? They value their time off so much that they're not going to work that mandatory overtime. And we don't adopt this mindset. We don't learn and say we need to think differently for this generation. They're not that different. They'll do it if we do that for them. And so what we're going to need a whole lot more advanced regional training facilities where people can go and do it. We're also going to need to move a lot more of that kind of training online for these folks because they do want to be the DUI guy. But if you're in an agency, and we were talking about some agency that had like 30 officers, you've got minimum manning demands and you're understaffed. How do you get people off for an 80-hour training? You want a radar school. You want to do this. You want to be a firearms instructor. You want to be a DT instructor. They want that, and they're going to leave if they don't get it. So we're going to have a whole lot more turnover from Gen Z for that reason, except for the smart agencies that do invest and build this into the whole program. If we do that, we're going to be fine. That's my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot to bite off there because you touched on a lot of the issues that are germane to what leaders are trying to work with today. And a lot of times it boils back down to um, I don't want to be too critical, but just what my own experiences have taught me and what I've seen is a lot of times when it comes to staffing, like the first mistake that agencies make is they don't understand if they're right staffed or not. Like there's because they're not capturing any data and they're not measuring, like the measure of how they're doing is are you busy or not? Like, hey, how are things? Oh, it's busy.
Yeah, it's always missing. Always
Oh,
carry a clipboard.
yeah. What's going on? Oh man, you wouldn't believe it. God, it's like one thing to the next.
Yeah,
What? Well,
nonstop.
what are your top three calls for service? What are the things that are really driving your issues? Oh, well, like same old stuff. Well, no, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. Like, I could tell you about my agency, in my 9 districts, I can tell you what the top five calls for service are in each one of them. But I don't know about your city. And, I don't know about your resources, how many people you have, like how many calls for service, per day are your officers handling? How many arrests are they making generally? Like how many traffic citations are they writing? How many crashes do you have? What are the top, five intersections for crashes? Like I don't know any of that. But if you're the leader of the organization, you better know all of it.
Right.
And so I think oftentimes people get into these upper level, leadership positions without having a true understanding of, is the agency even right staffed or not? Like, do we have enough people? Do we have too many people, or do we have just enough? And what's the criteria to evaluate that? And then, what are the community expectations for what they want from you? Because that's going to drive all your decisions around, how you allocate your resources. Sure, there are things that police leaders should always dictate um, based on their experience, and but there's also things that the community should be dictating about what they expect from their police department. And if you're not having those conversations, then you're not going to know. And that just kind of that just not to get off on a tangent there, but when you're understaffed, legit understaffed, which I
Hmm.
think most agencies are,
I
I
do
don't
too.
think there's too many agencies that are overstaffed. And now you combine that with what we talked about earlier, right? Understaffed, calls for service are not declining, the demand for police services are up. What do we do? Like, we're in a catch-22 here. The quandary is like, how do you maintain a high level of service? How do you keep your community safe without burning out your police officers? Because cops can't work 24 hours a day. We're, even though we do a lot of
Right.
times, um, and I call it's one version of the doom loop, where you get into this cycle and it's hard to break out of. Like it's really hard to get out of this cycle of this spiral of longer hours, uh, trying to handle more calls for service, which drives more people out the door, which which pushes the demand on these declining number of officers. Pressure is going up. Um, yeah, so at some point, right, something's got to give, and this is, I think, goes back to how we started this conversation. Well, how do agencies sometimes compensate for that? Well, guess what? We see it all the time now. We're no longer going to respond to these types of calls for service. We're just not coming, and don't call us.
Yes.
So you
That
can
it's a
call, but we're not coming,
right.
right? And why aren't we coming? Well, we don't because we can't. Like, the butter has been spread too thin,
Hmm.
and now there's no coverage left. And so, and then this is this is where the leadership side then, especially on the political side of things, well, who are the first people that complain when the police don't show up? It's the same people that complain when they do.
Right.
And now it's we start writing checks with our mouths that our resources can't cash. Oh, we'll handle that. We'll handle that, right? And then you get those, um, yeah, we're gonna add overtime. We're gonna put these we're gonna add resources into this area. But what mayors never say, when, oh, yeah, we're dumping resources into this area. We're gonna solve this problem. This isn't acceptable. What they're not saying is, well, this is what we're gonna stop doing. This is where we're gonna pull all of our resources from so we can focus it here. So we'll wait till that problem flares up later, and then we'll reallocate resources to that. So it becomes this shell game. It's like a house of cards.
It is
And
totally. And they,
yeah,
we've seen more and more cities. I think Pittsburgh was the biggest one that said that, we weren't going to be doing any responses between 2 and 5 a.m. And then people were like, well, what happens? Well, if something serious happens. Okay.
call the
But
state
otherwise,
police.
yeah, I mean that's what it's got to be. So they're like, are we doing that just for one district and saying, well, this district, if it can't wait, then we'll send somebody from another district over there to handle it. But again, you're getting to the point where it's not that can only be a short-term strategy. It can
Yes.
never be a long-term strategy. And we really need a mind shift among leadership. And for all these things, Philadelphia lowered its reading requirement for recruiting officers. First, in 2020, they put in a residency requirement that said that you didn't just have to move to Philadelphia, you had to have lived in Philadelphia for the past year. Then 2 years ago, they took that away, and then they dropped. They were losing too many people in reading comprehension, so they lowered it. So we're going to just lower our standards and lower our standards until what? And then big brouhaha in NYPD about 3 years ago was they got rid of I think it's a mile and a half run at the end of the academy. This is after people have had more than 200 hours of DT. and runs and stuff like that. And they got rid of it for the idea, well, we never run after anybody for a mile and a half. It's not what we're asking them to do. We're asking these people that are about to graduate from the police academy to show a display of their commitment and their what their physical ability is proven to be. That's what we're asking for. And no, I don't think anybody, I don't think we need to get into these, point break long foot pursuits going through houses and
Well, those are fun though.
over fences. But what we do need to do is we do need to have people that are fit and able, and we need a demonstration of that at some point, and to just show that we can do it, and that we need to stay in shape to do the job.
Well, now you're getting into my yeah, my
I
bread and
am.
butter, right? This
That's
is
right.
uh yeah, I'm a firm believer in wellness for a lot of reasons. And fitness, I came from a strong fitness background, being a tactical guy. It wasn't until later in my career that I started to realize like, well, you can't exercise your way out of like a bad headspace, although it can help, right? You have to have a balanced approach across all things. Um, but we do a really good job, I think, of training like the tactical and the technical expertise that we're supposed to have, but not really necessarily the 6 inches between the ears, and what makes the brain and body run optimally. And when you start burning people out, it doesn't matter how good your diet is, it doesn't matter how well you exercise. If you're being overworked and you're overstressed, then you're going to have things start to break down. And so and that's one of the reasons why people leave is they recognize that like
Right.
this is not healthy. I can't sustain this and I don't see any relief coming anytime soon. So they go. So wellness again is looked at, it's looked at as a cost. Sometimes we look at it in terms of dollars and cents, like how much does it cost to hire and train and equip an officer? But oftentimes we don't say, well, what are the hidden costs when we lose an officer, because they see the writing on the wall and they realize like, hey, like I, I do want to protect my personal time. I do want to um, live a long, healthy life after retirement. I don't want to die 20 years, below the national average, which cops do. We can get into all the horrific details, but we're not teaching people what happens to them when they return. Everyone's going to take some time there. Here's what you have to understand. When you're working nights, you're working against your circadian clock. You're working against biology, and your cortisol levels are going to be naturally increased. And now we're going to throw you. But I do think like standards. Yeah, yeah. I mean, show me an example of where that ever works in anything. Like, hey, we have an airline shortage, so we're going to change the training requirements for our pilots.
Right.
I mean, come on. Like, what Donald Rumsfeld, like you go to war with the army or the military that you have, not that you want. And you can look at that from a couple different angles, but if you lower standards and if you make it easier, then it's very easy to forecast what's going to come. And lowering standards, changing standards, it never improves performance. So,
No, and now what are we going to do? We go into a surplus of officers, so we're going to have a generation that doesn't read. We raise our standards later.
well, and this is where,
How does that
I,
work?
well, I guess you're going to rely on the AI to do the job for them. You're just going to have the human in the loop, as the meat and bones, and and blood in an environment that, the human is just there to be the conduit to collect the data. Um, Now, yeah, I say that, a little flippantly, but that's kind of where we've been going for the last 20 years with technology, right? When you no longer, and we know that from the London cab studies, right? What happens in the brain of cabbies when they have to memorize streets, right? Their prefrontal cortex grows. It has other effects on the brain and problem solving capabilities. And when you take those things away, I mean, anyone that's ever, I don't care what your profession is, right? If you're training and trying to teach someone a new trade and skill, um, you know who's going to succeed and who's not pretty early by their ability to problem solve and engage. And
Right.
if they can't even mentally engage in something, then it's not a matter of, if they're going to fail, it's when and, what are the ramifications of the failure going to be. And so I do think technology can fill gaps, and I think there is a lot of value in the AI tools that are coming on board. And we'll cover this, and then maybe we'll shut it down for this first one because we've been going for a while.
Yeah.
But one of the latest discussions is AI generated police reports, automation of some of these administrative functions and tasks. And you know, I started tinkering with this technology, about a decade ago. I was a very early adopter for some of these technologies. We did a lot of testing for it. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. We learned some things very early on about what officers liked and what they didn't like, and then also some of the ramifications inside the organization for what that really meant. Um, but here's my big picture view of where technology is really helpful in this, particularly in this time when resources are in very, very tight demand. If you can free up some of these administrative tasks, things and I'll give you an example. I did an assessment. I brought in about 25 of our staff members from patrol, from investigations, from admin, from records, uh, an analyst, and we looked at like an average burglary call. Like what's the time invested in an average burglary call? We did a bunch of things, but this was just one example. On this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier too, right? If you have an addict in a neighborhood that starts conducting burglaries, what's the demand increase on your services going to be? Because the call comes into dispatch, so that's a five, depending on how many questions and how busy the room is, that's a 5 to 10 minute, workload demand right there on, see how my camera zoomed out on me.
Yeah.
Uh, I got to be careful I talk a lot with my hands and with this camera has like hand gesture stuff built into it. So sometimes it, it does some
That's
strange
pretty
things
cool.
if it catches me talking with my hands. Um, so the officer gets that call comes into their MDT. They read it. Depending on, maybe they're on a call right now, and so that call just goes into their queue if it's not a crime in progress and a high priority emergency. And so let's just assume that an officer is not doing anything in the moment. They get this call. They got drive time. They get there. You go knock on the door. You talk to Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith says, "Yeah, I was at work. I came home for lunch. And when I went into the kitchen, I saw my back door was open. My big screen TV is off the wall. My laptop that was sitting on my kitchen table is gone. Some of my wife's jewelry is gone. And so now you like the officer is literally on a notepad. What's your name? What's your date of birth? What's social? What's the address? Writing down notes about what happened. And then he's going to check the scene and he's going to ask, "Oh, what was the brand of your television?" It was a Samsung. Okay, what was the model? I don't remember. Do you have any information on what the serial number is? No. Can you find that for me? What's the value of it? Same thing with your phone, same thing with your laptop. Well, I'll have to wait till my wife gets home from work so I can, have her look through the jewelry. So now you're building this list and you're writing it all down, and then um, depending on the agency, right, and the way that you operate, it's a burglary. We might have to make a quick assessment on the value of property stolen to make a determination if we're going to call it a crime scene investigator. Some agencies, it doesn't matter. Like every burglary is a crime scene invest. They're going to bring out, you know, a technician that's going to dust, take prints, take images. Some the patrol officer do it themselves. Some they just don't do it. Right? Broken window, a little blood sitting on the windowsill. Oh well, it doesn't get collected. It stays there. So I'm going through a million of these scenarios, but in the end, the officer leaves. He goes out to his car. Now, if he's proactive and if he doesn't have five calls stacked in his queue, like this is just one of many that he's stopping at on the way, then what should he do? Right? I'm going to walk around. I'm going to knock on the neighbors.
Mm.
And hey, did you see anything? You have a doorbell camera? Do you have security cameras? Anything like this? Like we're going to canvass and we're going to try to get clues to help us solve this problem, solve this crime. And we all know that that gets done at a different level of competency inside of every organization in every police department across America. Like some do it very, very well because the culture expects it and demands it. Some do a piss poor job. They just show up and, oh, that's too bad. What do you want me to do about it? you know, and so in the end, like everything is dependent, but you go out to the car. If you don't have more calls waiting, maybe you can do some follow up if you had any leads. But a lot of times, no witness, no camera, no lead. Maybe you did get some physical evidence there, but it's going to go to the lab, and that'll be 2 years before you get a fingerprint back, from the lab on a non-priority case like that. Um, but now you go out to the car and you drive to a safe spot where now you open up your laptop and you take out your note that you just had and you start filling out the police report, like name, um, address, and oh, wait, here are the five things that were stolen. Now I go into the property fields and I got to manually type in Samsung television, serial number, unknown, blah, blah, blah. You spend we estimated on a burglary call, a minimum you're going to be on scene for 20 minutes. If it requires technician to work, you're looking at least probably an hour, if not longer, depending on the size and scope again. But on your run of the mill, just kind of average report, you're you now you're doing these administrative tasks. You write the narrative on the above date and time. I, Officer Smith, drove to this address at this time of day and met with, Mr. Jones, who reported that his house had been burglarized. And you go through all the questions and you type all that, and now you send it to your supervisor. And your supervisor, let's just say you got 20 people working, right? Could be 20 or one supervisor is responsible for 10, one's responsible for another 10, whatever. These reports start coming into the queue and they're reading them and they're checking them for everything that you're going to need to make sure that you've met all your mandated reporting requirements. And let's just say there's a couple things that they need to send back and it goes back and forth. But anyway, it comes back in. Now it's a burglary. If it gets approved, now it goes to the records division. They do the same thing. And then from there, it gets filed, or maybe it goes up to detectives if it met a dollar threshold.
Mhm.
Um, um, and now that a detective opens up a detective supervisor opens up that case and they have to preview it. Is this a case worthy? What's the solvability factor?
What's the solvability? Yeah.
Do we send it to a detective, assign it to a detective to work, and then the detective, on top of the 50 active cases that he has in his files, now gets one more? and now he starts and stops, starts and stops, starts and stops, all these different cases. And so the process becomes really, we drive around, we write this stuff down, we make formal documents to uh, historicalize it, and then someday maybe we act on it again, right? So this is, it goes all the way back to what we talked about with data, but that's about, we figured the organizational investment is anywhere between 4 and 6 hours, right there. If
Right.
it gets assigned to a detective and a detective works it, it's going to go immediately from about 20 hours to 40 hours. So that's a lot of time. Um, and now you have to look at the size of your organization, and then maybe an arrest eventually gets made or not. But if you're an agency that doesn't do a good job of tracking data and understanding what's happening, well, let's just say it's 5 o'clock when Officer Smith took that report at 6:30. When Officer Jones comes to work, he's got a report in his queue. It's 2 blocks away from where this guy just was, and he goes and it's a burglary. Um, um, then if nobody's looking, then we might realize that, well, there's this has happened 6 or 7 times in a 10 block radius, and no one ever connects the dots. No one ever tries to look for these things that might, increase solvability. Or if you solve one or get a higher level of information on one, you might solve nine more, right? So all of these things are their time, effort, and resources that go into it, that if you don't act upon, or if you don't have good systems in place to solve, well, the work just keeps piling up and stacking up and stacking up and stacking up and stacking up. And it makes it harder and harder and harder for the people to try to sort through the noise to focus on what they can accomplish. Every once in a while, you might get lucky, or you have, I don't like to call it luck, but your proactive cops that spend all, their time doing background, trying to figure it out, looking for all these things, talking to other people on their beat, moving around, getting to know people. But it's a simple, it's a simple equation, and it's a long, long, long way of saying there are AI tools now that are available that can not just look at what you've done today, but it can look at what every single person in your organization has done today, and it can compare it against what you did yesterday, the day before, the week before, the month before, the year before, and it can look for all of the potential connectivity in all of this work. It can sort through the noise, and it can give you information or ideas about where might to go next,
Right.
and you don't have to remember it all. And it can so and it can literally take, like, you can walk in and have this conversation, and your interview can be transcribed, the narrative can be transcribed from your body camera, and so by the time you get back to your car, the report is literally already written, and you can put parameters in for what must be included in every type of nature code for your calls to ensure that the officers are asking the right questions. Because if they didn't, then they're going to be required to go back or call them back and ask them for the additional information. So there, the challenge is, like, that's a process to learn how to do a good investigation, and you just have to do them. You can read about them, you can watch them, and I mean, I think there are faster ways to learn, to get good repetition on learning. But at the end, it's like that's going to be the real challenge moving forward, because you can't just have the AI do it for you. You have to have the human in the loop to do it. But you're understaffed, you're overworked. This investment in technology might be the cost of a couple officers, but amplifies,
Right.
your results 100-fold, if not a
Yeah, it's a
thousand-fold.
like a force multiplier. Yeah,
Yes.
and n probably not a good time to invest in college education for becoming crime analyst right this second. When
No.
you have, we're very close to having chiefs be able to, push a single button and get a more accurate report of what's going on than any crime analyst could spend 32 hours developing. And he can change the parameters on his dashboard so he can be able to see exactly where we need to deploy those resources. If we got enough burglary reports in and we did this, everybody said intelligence-led policing,
Yep.
but everybody wanted it to come in a flat IKEA box. They're like, what is it? It's a philosophy. I don't want a philosophy. I want something.
Yeah. I want
I
a
want to plug
solution.
it in. And I'm like, well, we're going to send TAC. And at that time, we had patrol TAC officers who, they would be guided to go out and do the proactive policing and be the meat eaters of our agency. Go out there. They had proven themselves, and we made them. Um, how did we say it earlier? We got them incentivized
Yep.
to do good work and to do more good work. Well, now they're going to be going in that area. They're going to be seeing, they're going to be talking to everyone who's pushing a lawnmower at 2:30 in the morning.
What are you
Nobody
doing? Oh,
reported their
I'm just,
lawnmower stolen, but we still need to do that. We still need to
yeah.
we still need to say you can pick it up at the police station tomorrow, and let me just get your name and we called them FIRs, intelligence reports.
Yeah.
Send that into the crime analysis. Now you just send it into your AI enhanced RMS, and the dots are getting connected, saying so. I mean, it has so much value to do. One of the things that I discussed, I got to be on a webinar recently about this, and it was an agency that was actually uh, pilot testing an AI reporting system. And my chief concern is I don't want AI to make lazy officers more lazy. I want it to be something that enhances the ability of all the officers to make them better crime fighters in that rather than just better report takers. And but they put some landmines in those reports too, where
Yeah.
the officer actually has to read it because they'll put a few ridiculous, illogical statements in there, and they have to go and be able to sort through it and get them out. But I'm all for it. I just want us to really let that help us get back to the basics of policing. I want to have it relieve the administrative function so that we can have more and more operational function.
Yeah, I called it value-based policing. That was just the best way I could describe it because what what we wanted to ultimately do was everything that you're going to invest your time in, you're getting like there is a value assigned to you, um, based on your salary, your equipment, everything that we do, all the training, everything that we invest in you, there's a dollar amount to you that we can look at for what you're doing every minute of the day, how much it costs for you to be here. So if you're um, if you're an officer that's like that gets assigned to a TAC team, right? You're getting assigned there for a reason, is because you've displayed that you have a high level of competence and, a stick-to-itiveness, desire, high drive, whatever you want to call it, right? Like
Yeah.
people, rarely like fall into those positions, they get chosen because of, demonstrated, work product. And so this goes back to, are you understaffed, overstaffed, or right staffed? So this is where your middle management, your frontline supervisors and your lieutenants and your captains have to have an understanding of what their people are doing all day long. Um, and the technology has made it a lot easier. When we were doing this back in 2014 and 15, like I mean, we were literally building spreadsheets by hand, before we had tools like Heimdall and stuff. Like I think I told you about on the call that, that when I worked with Purdue, some folks there, And now it's you're seeing it a lot more in some of these CAD and RMS platforms.
Hmm.
They're starting to adopt these intelligence-led policing platforms. It's what drives value in the AI tools. There is an ROI calculation for you there because what you're trying to do is save up some of these tasks, free up officers from doing tasks that drive low value, so you can assign them to the things that you know are going to drive high value.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like why would you want an officer sitting behind the stop and rob uh, for 3 hours writing reports when an AI tool could do it for you in 20 minutes?
Hmm.
Like literally have everything done, maybe even faster. I'll say 20 to 30 minutes because that requires officers proofing, reading, ensuring everything is accurate, like you said, making sure that they're not getting lazy and not letting the purple cat flew over the moon,
Right.
being dropped into the middle of their narrative and not catching it.
Yeah.
So, but and there's other tools in there too, like that agencies can use. Um, but that's the end game, right? That's ultimately, so in addition to having uh, this administrative support in a technical fashion, we're improving our ability to see what's happening. It gives us, we're not stuck down in the weeds all the time. I think it just gives everybody a higher level perspective on what's actually occurring around them in the community, and that they can focus on on things like DUIs or drug arrest or um, doing lethality assessments and making sure that they're spending that extra 45 minutes on that domestic violence call rather than, just going there and telling them, "Hey, knock it off, or if I have to come back here, someone's going to jail." And you got those guys that do that all night long, right? If
Yeah.
I have to come back here, you're not gonna like it. And then their partner is over is back there 2 hours later. But I digress.
Well, I also hope that it democratizes the information to the point where um, patrol sergeants are able to, have all of the information at their fingertips too. The same things that the chief would need. We don't need to wait until the chief comes in nine to five and makes the decision. I want them to be able to um, come on shift. They just had their 3 days off. They're coming back for 2 days and be able to see it like with the touch of a button. What are the trends? What is happening here? What can I expect the chief to ask me in the crime meeting? And of course, the chief's going to ask me what's going on in the city. And I haven't been in the city for the past 3 days.
Well,
But
this is what, yeah.
yeah, but here's the deal. You're gonna know, that the B-side shift, they did a bang up job, and they caught this guy, and we think he's good for it, and so on and so forth. But without having all that human processing of that, without having and you and I think we talked. I think it was just after I had done one of my AI classes, and I told you how shocked I was at how concerned people are about AI. They're concerned about the disruption of it, and then they're concerned about possible apocalypse. But you know, do we not want, if we already have somebody in position control, if we have somebody who's super smart like a crime analyst, do we not want them doing higher and higher things? I say we do. I say we do, and I say that this is going to be this great opportunity for the future for people to be able to really spread their wings and accomplish a lot more. AI enhanced. I like AI to be the ladder that I climb to change, for me to change the light bulb.
Absolutely. Because with the right information in the right hands at the earliest possible time, to go back to the burglary analogy, you make some of these connections sooner. If you solve a burglary at 20, because if someone's robbing one house, they don't stop at one house,
No.
right? They don't
And we know
stop
we're only
until they're,
getting half the reports.
yeah, they don't stop until they're in jail. Um, that will lead to a whole another conversation. But if you stop them at 20, the average is probably closer to, they're probably doing closer to 100 before they ever get caught. Um, Depending on, I guess, how high they are when they're out doing it. But um, the good ones never get caught, right? you know,
Yeah,
or very rarely do the really good ones get caught. But if you let's just say, for example, you solve it at 20 instead of 40, you have to look at the ROI on that. That's 40 burglaries that did not occur
right.
because your culture, your tools, your techniques solved it sooner. 20 people that were not victimized. But that computates to hundreds of hours of time saved. Because another part, and this is where I think the next level is going to go, and where it needs to go is a complete criminal justice system, not just individual agencies with their CAD and RMS systems. And this goes all the way back to data sharing. But this is in I promise I'll shut up after this one. You have 100, let's just say 100,000 calls for service per year come in, and that generates 30,000 police reports. So there's 70,000 calls that required some type of entry into CAD. That's data points that come in. If you
Hmm.
don't look at that data, you've just discarded 70% of the data that could help make you it could drive higher level informed decision making for your resources.
You've
Of
cheated
those
yourself.
of those 30,000 police reports, let's just say 5,000 of them um, go to detectives for follow-up. And let's say of those, 1,000 of them get assigned. And well, we could look at this a couple of different ways. And of those 1,000, let's just say 500 eventually um, get forwarded to the prosecutor's office or your district attorney's office for review. So if you were to calculate all of the man hours that went into collecting all of that information for the 500 that eventually get reviewed by your district attorney, your district attorney and your prosecutor, when they get that, they're going to do the same exact process that a detective did. They're going to look at it, there isn't solvability, right?
Right.
It's, can I get a conviction or not?
Convictability. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, and can I even plea this one out, or what's going to happen? So, a lot of cases, big frustration for detectives, and I'm just talking about detective cases. I'm not talking of those 30,000 that you actually wrote reports on. 10,000 of those might have been arrest, like DUI arrest and traffic stops, driving while suspended, all, domestic violence, all the things that patrol is doing on their own, not the things that are going, your part one crimes that are going up to your detectives. They're making the same calculations and decisions based on the resources that they have. 80% of the cases that get there filed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they're not going to prosecute for maybe it's lack of resources. And this is where I do think AI is going to be a game changer for all of this, because now not only are we going to have all of in my county alone, we have 5 different police agencies that are working, and then you have child protective services, adult protective services, your alcohol teams. You have all these different state enforcement level that are all coming into the county prosecutor's office. And I know the structure is a little bit different everywhere, but that's a lot of information. So like they have to make smart decisions about how they're going to use their resources as well. But there's so much bleed in the system, so much bleed, like information that gets lost, cases that don't get solved that could have been solved. Not because people don't want to do it, it's just that we just don't have the capacity to do it, and the technology hasn't been there. But now, like AI never forgets, ever. It's
Right.
always there. And if we go all the way back to the beginning, right? We collect really good data. We collect as much as it if we can. We make sure it's as accurate as we possibly can make it. then every single day, every minute of every day, we're going backwards and forwards, and we're making these new connections. And I do think that that is also a contributing factor in why we're starting to see um, property crime rates dropping, violent crime rates starting to drop. I do think we're getting better at identifying that 1%. And I think in the next 10 years, it's going to be hard to be a criminal and get away with it. So,
Well, I
and
hope so. And
then
they're
we
not
won't need
getting
as many
smarter.
people.
Have you ever been up against Lex Luthor?
Hmm.
Me either.
Not that I know of.
No, I mean we watch movies. We love going to the movies. We love watching these cop movies. You know, it's Al Pacino versus Robert De Niro. We can't figure out who we like better, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're not dealing with that. You know, there's very little conspiracy involved in most of these plans. Usually, a conspiracy is just two people with the same bad idea.
Yeah. Well, if one person can mess something up, two can really screw it up bad. Yeah. All right. Well, I knew this was going to happen. We got on to some long tangents there, and this has been a fascinating conversation. Um, we'll have to do a part two down the road.
I hope so. Thank you so much for bringing me on, and I've been looking forward to talking to you for years.
Yeah, this has been fun, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing. Where so just give us before we shut this down, give us just a quick snapshot of what you're currently doing right now, and maybe where, if someone's listening, where they might be able to get more information from you, or maybe help in some of your initiatives, or bring some of the training in that you're doing.
Well, thank you for that. You can book me for training on, and now I'm doing ethical AI leadership labs. And the idea is to become AI smart, AI competent without geeking out. And you can do that at commandstaffconsulting.com. You can go through the whole booking process, find a date, bring bring me out there, and I promise that you'll be telling your family when you get home about some of the benefits. It's not just parlor tricks. It's about ch changing our mindset about AI because we know that every procurement decision that's going to be made is going to have some sort of technical AI component in it. Just I saw a washer dryer at the Lowe's home improvement store with that was advertising the AI in your laundry machine. So we're not going to be able to buy anything without some AI in it, and it'd be great to be able to approach that with without the concerns and the fears that are associated with possible global destruction, and we're going to manage that, and then we're also going to manage the disruption that's going to come, and it's going to be um, you're going to leave with optimism. You're going to know how to use the tools that you already have just a little better too.
Really cool. And your Substack is AmericanPeaceOfficer.com.
It is, yes. And
And
loving the
uh,
opportunity to share and engage people on that too.
all right, well, I've already got some ideas for the next episode, and I had a I had a guest on last year. She teaches for Northwestern School of Police Staff and Command, but it was about resource allocation. And that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about because a lot of the conversations that we're having today are really all about resource allocation. Um, and so understanding that better for commanders, those that are in leadership positions, that the future is going to be won by those that A, know how to harness this technology, but B, more importantly, know how to individually optimize their employees. Because if they're not functioning at the highest level, then it really doesn't matter what kind of equipment or technology you put in their hands. Like you're going to lose work capacity there, and you're also going to cheat them out of, I think, the opportunity to have more enjoyment from the valuable and meaningful work that police officers get to do,
Right.
um, and the impact that they're going to have on their families and their communities, and be able to go out and leave the job knowing that they did that they did their part, and they get to now enjoy a long, healthy retirement.
I agree. I did a calculation just to figure out how many people, just basically the attrition rate for retirement on law enforcement officers. And of course, that gives us a replacement rate.
Yeah.
So, and it is about two-thirds. I did the total of how many high schools we have in the country. And it turns out that if we have two police officers from every graduating class, and it doesn't have to be the same year, it could just be eventually, sometime down the road. But from every year, that would have a surplus. That would have extra 17,000 surplus cops.
Two students per high school per year.
Yeah. And they can go to college and they can go to the military as long as they work their way back to policing, they can go, yeah, take a year off backpacking in Europe. As long as they come back.
Find
So,
themselves.
but we have to remind ourselves that this is numbers wise, it is achievable to get people not my level, but that level above. Those the naturals. There, it is possible for us to get enough naturals in there. I mean, and then people like me, useless until trained, but after you trained.
I find that a little hard to believe. I think we're being a little. You don't wind up in the chief's office because you're hard to train.
I had to figure some stuff out. I couldn't. I left the police academy not believing that anybody could lie to a uniformed police officer.
Yeah,
And then
I
the
was a bit
pendulum
naive
swung
like
where
that.
everyone was lying to me. So I had to figure some stuff out. But I'll tell you, training people, working with officers in block training, and then training people on the road, it brought me around, and it made me be very outcome focused for policing. Like, what are we doing this for? And when that becomes your question, and you're the only one who knows the answer, you get to lead.
All right, there we have it, folks. I think your agency, your organization would benefit from bringing Roland in. So really appreciate your time. This has been a really fun conversation, a little bit longer than than we said we were going to run.
Yeah.
And again, I apologize for some of my long diatribes, but it's
Oh,
all
don't.
important stuff. It's really important stuff, and I'm glad you took the time to share with us. So that's it, everybody. You know where to find them. Till the next episode, we'll be 1042.